Hello and welcome. Yes, Friday the 13th caught us, caught me. The technical difficulties have been managed, and we are here helping you to step into your greatest health using food as medicine. We're in the 3 E's to Optimal Health Empowerment series. I am Velyn Hawkins, your host, and my awesome guest today is Bob Hoffman. We're going to be talking about growing your garden, seed time and harvest. We're going to give you some tips for growing a healthy garden this season. And I just want to say that this is a season for seeding. How do you start and what can you expect? The preparation and seeding phase of growing a garden is the most important part of it all. And during this season, our guest is going to tell you why and how to prepare for planting and expecting your harvest. We're going to talk about some key things that you want to know when it comes to planting your own garden. And these are things that, we didn't have to maybe do 20 or 30 years ago because of some things that have changed. Climate change, the damage to soils from pesticides, and changes in the seeds that you buy. You want to pay attention to that. I'm sure we're going to get into some of that. And we're going to share what you want to be aware of as you're moving into growing your garden. So whether you've already started and you've got your seedlings growing indoors and you're anxiously waiting for weather like today to start planting, or planted because you're living in a space where you've got the climate temperature ready for you to start, or you just want to hang out and go to the nursing home. We're going to talk about preparing for the orders and this particular time with today for a couple of weeks. And so let's get started. We want you to and let go. How many disease, heart disease, they don't have to be. And the coronavirus coming up all everywhere, down of the country, basically, things are running rampant in this global society. And much of it starts with our food, and all of it starts with soil that juices the foods that we eat. So it starts with, and we're talking about
an opportunity to talk to everybody, and gardening is
absolutely. So, we get a chance to see your video of your story without everything what you do. Take a moment and share a little about your story and how you got to this where you're just such an avid based lifestyle and planting your own garden.
I've probably been a garden homer for 4 years, but it really wasn't until 4 years ago when I had eaten the standard American diet and loved it, and wouldn't have stopped for the world, except my health. I had diabetes for 30 years. I was taking all kinds of not only medication, but insulin shots, 5 insulin shots a day of 85 units a shot, which is a lot. And it's still, but anyway, I went to the doctor. The doctor said, there's nothing more he can do for me. It was looking like my ankles could possibly lead to amputation the way they looked. And I knew I was in big trouble. So I went home to the internet and researched and quickly found it's the food, just like you've been saying. and what I found out is I had to, if I was going to get well and live, I had to stop eating processed food, and I had to start eating fruits and vegetables. That simple. I went to Walmart, did my week shopping, and started. Bam. And since then, I have it's 4 years now, and most of my weight loss and my insulin reduction was during the first year, where I lost, well, now a total of 85 pounds, and also 85% of my diabetes. And I feel better than I've probably felt in 20 or 30 years, with more energy. One of the things that you don't always hear, but it's really, really important, is one of the biggest changes, besides getting all my energy back and sleeping better and using less insulin, a lot less, 85% less, and looking better and feeling better. Well, one of the big things really is when I do go out and garden, and I push myself to like near exhaustion. It used to take me days to recover, and I'll come in like ready to fall in the chair, tired, and the next morning I wake up and I can do it all over again. So my recovery of all that exercise is like phenomenal. I mean, I, I didn't have that ability since I was in my 20s. So anyway, that's my brief story. Yeah, I learned late and I learned the hard way, but I learned. And so, and I only learned, I guess I was 73 at the time I learned. So it really, and if you survive and you're still breathing, there's still opportunity to eat correctly. Amen.
I love that. And the fact that, you know, there's so many of us who are looking at being in that crisis state and having that opportunity to wake up to, you know, is there an alternative to all the medications that I've been taking for years that can change everything? And I love that it is food. And you started growing your garden as a result of what? Could you not find the foods at the grocery store? Or what got you into that?
Well, when I was a toddler in my grandparents' garden is when I actually started. Uh, they let me pick tomatoes, and they had a pear tree, and I was picking up pears from the ground, and that's when it started, my interest in gardening. And then when I first was married and we had a home and a little bit of ground, I started, and I loved it. And I always gardened organically, but I always gardened as a man. Okay, and what I mean by that is there's two ways to garden, as I see it. One is as a man, how we think, and when Adam and Eve were removed from the Garden of Eden, God's perfect place for mankind, by the way, that was the garden, and all he had to do was tend it. But when man sinned and they were removed, they had to find their food, grow their food. And what the first thing that Adam and Eve did, the Bible says, is they began to till the ground. And tilling the ground rips the cover off of the ground, which is the normal, natural way. And man has been gardening and farming this way until today. And what that does, when you take the skin off of the ground, it opens it up to all kinds of disease and pests and erosion and not good things. It actually begins to die. And so anyway, that's the story there. Now, what else would you like me to
You
give
said
you?
that there were two ways to garden.
Oh, yeah,
One was man and
yep,
tilling the ground.
right.
So,
And which we have done a very poor job of. Yes, we have survived and fed ourselves at the expense of the environment, the soil, the air, the water, and we can no longer continue to do that. So the only other way to garden or to farm is God's way. And what I mean by that is simply observing where God grows things and how he grows things and copying those techniques, those principles. And 4 years ago, I changed from gardening as a man to gardening by copying how God grows things. Number one is there's a covering on everything. Okay, that matters not whether it's a desert, a field, a forest. It always has a covering, and it's self-sustaining, and it's self-improving. The minute you rip the cover off, it starts to die. So 4 years ago, I started gardening as in a way that has a heavy wood chip mulch covering over the ground. It's called the Back to Eden garden style. Um, it's contrary to our human brain, but I was all in. I had a tandem truck dump load right in the middle of my garden, and I started spreading wood chips all over the top of my beautiful garden. And I
so
yes, go
real
ahead.
quick, let me ask this really quickly. Was it all dirt and then you brought the mulch chips in? and allowed that a little time to feed the soil, or tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, when I had the wood chips dumped, it had previously been a worked soil, rototilled soil garden for 2 or 3 years. I've now done the back to Eden garden style 4 years. This is going into the 5th year. Um, so it was wood chips over the soil, and you can, if you're starting a new one, you can put it right over grass. As long as it's deep enough, like 6 or more inches, it will block out the grass and the weeds so they will not grow up unless you happen to have really, really tough weeds. And you can go deeper, and you can also put down cardboard or paper and then put your wood chips on top of that using the paper or cardboard as a barrier. But so that was the first thing I did, was put down the wood chips. And you can plant, well, I had a garden there originally, so all I had to do was pull back the wood chips to the soil, plant my seeds, or preferably transplants in a freshly wood chip garden is better. Transplants are much easier to grow than seeds, especially the first year. So I did that, and I had an okay crop. And I think people would also. Plus, you can always pull the wood chips further back and fill it with compost and mulch and fertilizer and all that natural organic types of things. And the first year will be the least good year because those wood chips it's going to take time for it to break down and to become soil and humus. So the first year will be the least good year, and it's the most work. And the second year is like 100%, if not more, better. And you don't have to move the wood chips as far away this time, because after a year they've started to break down, and the third year more. Well, now I'm in my beginning of my 5th year. I can take my 1-foot pitchfork and just push it into the ground, like with no resistance, a whole foot down, and I don't turn it. What I do is I use it like a broad fork, which is you push it in the ground, you pull back on it, so it breaks the surface binding of the soil, and then you push forward, and that action breaks it in little chunks, big chunks, and air and water can now more easily go down into the soil, as compared to just leaving it as a kind of a solid amount of soil. So anyway, it gets better and better year after year. It does take patience and time, and it takes learning of what to do and how to do it, because like I say, this is contrary to how man's mind works and wants to plant. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow. So it really is, and I love how you said, it takes time. In this day and age where we're constantly thinking to ourselves, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. And, I want to do something that is so condensed. There are ways to plant a garden that it's not going to be like the Back to Eden garden in space, but I've known people to plant a garden, small garden, in an 80-foot fish tank,
mm-hmm.
with layering the dirt, composting the dirt. I think I love your wood chips on top to allow the dirt to really, I guess, ferment is a great analogy to put with it.
Mm-hmm.
But then not taking the chips out to still plant, right? You're making the holes for the seedlings or the seeds, and you're planting right there, even with the wood chips being there, right?
Mm-hmm. The wood chips moderate the temperature. They prevent evaporation of this and drying out of your soil. So your soil is always moist. It's always, if it's cold out, it keeps your soil warmer. If it's hot, a really hot day, it'll keep your soil roots cooler. I mean, plants love it. So yes, anybody can plant a garden. Deciding on day one, the best advice I have to give is, if it's your first time garden, do a small garden, because it'll take a very small amount of time, effort, and work, and money. And if, as long as you've made a commitment to do this and attend to it, you'll be somewhat successful. And I wouldn't start with seeds, because that's another level of difficulty. I would start with, go to the garden center, buy what vegetables you like the best and your family likes the best. And I don't mean a lot of them, because that's another problem. You buy too many, but just buy a few. Start with one plant, and start with very small, and just learn. People always say, well, I don't have a green thumb. Well, no gardener and no farmer has a green thumb. They earned their green thumb. They learned to have a green thumb. And you know how they learned it? They learned it by making mistakes and learning the hard way. So the longer I garden, and the more I love it, the more I realize everything in a garden is an experiment. Even if you did it successfully last year, things change, conditions change, you change, the garden changes, weather changes. So it's a constant learning thing, and so don't look at failures as like the worst thing that ever happened. If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough.
They are truly the lessons that help you do better next time. I
Right.
love that. And I love what you talked about as far as the green thumb, and it really is about looking at this as playing in the dirt. And when you're doing that, I think that, everything is energy. And I say this all the time, but it's the energy that you bring to the dirt that also allows the dirt to do what it does or what it wants to do best. Somebody bringing, I don't have a green thumb and, I can't grow anything, to try and grow a garden, that energy is what leaves them and goes to the garden, and it's going to do just that.
Well, yeah, excuse me. I just, today's need for gardening has never been this high since World War II. In World War II, if you didn't have a garden, a victory garden, they called it, you didn't have enough to eat, because all the food was sent overseas for the troops to eat. So you grew the garden if you wanted to eat. Today, the circumstances are different, but the world is such a mess and so chaotic. And the way your food is treated and grown, you can't count on it. You don't know what's in it, and they're not going to tell you what's in it, and you're going to eat it, and you're probably going to be sicker than you should be. So that's why today people should seriously take a look at needing and wanting to plant a garden, not only for their health, but the health of their husband, their wife, their children, so that they can have healthy food. The food that you buy at the grocery store is at best 50% of what it should be. And that's being generous. And the pesticides that were sprayed on it are lethal. A lot of them. And organic is certainly better and should be bought whenever you can and have the money to do it. But growing your own garden, you are in control. You know exactly what you did and what you put on it, what you didn't put on it. And you can pick it fresh at the peak of ripeness. A tomato that comes to the the market, or a cucumber, or a head of lettuce or whatever, had to be grown and picked before it was really ripe. And a lot of nutrients only come into a food in the last day or two or three. So it's picked green, or it's picked early, and it's gassed to give it color and ripen and look beautiful on the shelf, but it's not necessarily the most nutritious or the best tasting. And so that's why you're not getting the best. And farmers markets are certainly next best. But your garden is the absolute best. So I would like to say this about gardening. It does take commitment and follow through. And there are so many qualities to gardening that most people don't really realize. And maybe if they keep up doing it, they'll realize all the benefits that they are getting from a garden. And just this morning, I listed some, and I thought it might be interesting to the listeners to hear what my garden gives to me, and what my garden gives to me can be yours and as well. So here I'm just going to read my list of what my garden gives to me back. Okay, first of all, it's my gym membership. Okay, it costs me nothing. It's on my front lawn, and all I have to do is go out, and there's my gym. So it's my gym membership. It's my health spa. It's my mental health therapy. It's my grocery store. It's my classroom for learning. It's my connection to the Creator. It's my gift bags of produce that I give to my neighbors, my friends, and my family. I love doing that, and nobody refuses a bag of produce free. My time alone with God is cherished. It's my living room. Because my garden is on my front lawn, people see me and they stop, and they chat, and I chat, and friends stop, they honk when they go by. I've met dozens of people in my garden living room, and I have a couple of benches, and we sit and we talk. So it's a meeting place. It's my garden is a fulfillment of my life purpose that was given to me. Okay. And that's very satisfying and fulfilling. And it's my place for peace, joy, wonder, and it's really a slice of heaven. One of the very first things I do upon waking very early is waiting for the sun to come up sometimes, and going out into my garden at the break of dawn, and the dew is on the garden, and everything is fresh from the night moisture. And it's just a new day for them and me. And I walk through my garden, and I look at everything and what's going on. And it's just a wonderful experience. And if you have a wife or a husband and you're doing it together, that is invaluable time together, doing something together as a hobby, a lifelong time hobby. And if you have children, way better. I mean, dads can relate to their children totally differently. Children, dads, you can see your children in a totally different light. Some of their attributes come alive to you. You didn't think they had that reasoning or that thought or that knowledge or that amount of energy they really getting excited about growing things, or they aren't, but then they taste their first produce. Their first tomato, let's say, or cucumber, and that they're sold. Then they're hooked. And not only that, but once your kids see what it takes to grow, they appreciate fruits and vegetables so much more. And if they grew it and picked it, they will eat it, what they would never touch, but with a 10-foot pole. So that's what a garden is. It just gives you everything under the sun, free of charge. it's just an unbelievable treat. And that's what I would wish for everybody. And don't, just
I
because,
would,
go ahead.
go ahead. I was going to say, I would only add to that that it is an excellent way of giving and receiving.
Yes.
You know, I love that. Yes. And so
Go ahead.
I was going to say, just to change gears just a little bit, one of the things that came clear to me as I began my journey was I found myself questioning, well, everybody has to eat food, everybody, food, eat to live, and um, don't eat to diet or don't diet to eat. And then you think about where does it all begin? And I want to go back to the soil for just a moment,
Hmm.
because I think it's important as we're looking at, growing our backyard garden or our front yard garden or our side yard garden or our indoor garden. It starts with the soil.
Right.
And I think that people, a lot of people that I've talked to recently in particular, we know that the pesticides are evaporating up into the clouds, and when the rain comes and the pesticides come back and they're spread now in vast areas. And at this juncture, I know here we've had probably the last couple of weeks, there's been maybe 1 or 2 or 3 days that we haven't had rain. Probably the past couple of months. During the course of every other week, you might see a day that it's not raining, which would lead you to believe that the rain has released the toxins. But it's important to understand too that they're still releasing those into the soil. And if people have questions about, well, is their soil, how rich is their soil for growing right now? What do they need to do in with respect to what it is that you've mentioned? What can they do to make sure that they're not overdoing it or underdoing it as they're preparing their soil for these seedlings to be planted? One of the things that I recommended was getting your soil tested. Do you have any feedback on that?
I did a soil test about 3 or 4 years ago, and it wasn't terrifically helpful. Um, it, I think if you put lots and lots of organic material in your soil or in your compost, which then breaks down and you put it on top of your soil, or if you put a layer of organic material, if it's not wood chips, you could use leaves, you can use hay, you can use grass clippings, anything organic will work. Um, that putting that covering on alone will improve your soil. One of the things, the one thing that I am really, really passionate about and love is improving the soil. Okay. Um, I hear people and see people who say, well, we have the absolute worst soil. You could plant a wonderful garden on a beach with the proper techniques. I could plant I am being serious now, not fictitious, whatever. Uh, I could actually plant my garden on top of my paved driveway, and in a matter of a year or two, start to have some amazing garden without any connection to the actual soil, right on top of a parking lot even. So whatever you got, you can use. But having poor soil is no excuse not to garden. Whether it's clay or whether it's sand or whether it's rocks, you can plant, if not in it, you can plant on it. And soil comes from rocks. Okay, the minerals that are in soil come from rocks, broken down. Now, yes, truly, it takes hundreds of years for those rocks to break down. But before you throw all the rocks away in your garden, save some. That's future soil. And
Interesting.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so anybody can grow a garden anywhere. They just have the will. And I think with the internet, my heavens to Betsy, there's so many hundreds or thousands of sites that you can watch videos, and you, even the worst person doing the worst garden for the first time in their life on a video, making 90% mistakes, even I can watch it and learn something. Okay, even if it's learning what not to do. Okay, so that's one less thing you got to do. You don't need to make that mistake. and and if you want to know what else they said that is true, if you watch a bunch of other videos and it's repeated by people you can know that they know what they're saying or doing, then you can say, well, that's probably a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can learn, and there's no, I mean, I learn lots of things about gardening daily,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's the beauty of it. Anybody
So,
who gardens has got to be an optimist.
mm-hmm.
If you're a pessimist and you want to garden, I think you might try another hobby,
Mm-hmm.
or
That's that energy I was talking about. Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm right. I'm 77. I'm planting trees. I tripled my garden area. I mean, it will take years before it's as good as the rest of it. And I don't know how long I've got, but I have to live for it. And I'll live for it to the day I die. So
Awesome.
how could
So,
I not feel good and love it? It's a reason to be. It's a reason to live. It's a reason to eat. It's a reason to love others and love what you're doing.
and I love how you talked about the things that your garden gives you and the fact that you have these gift bags that you can give to the community. I love that. And, I wanted to also ask you, Bob, what's your take on, um, and how are you managing this in your garden? Is it important to grow certain vegetables together? Like I found out that, what is it? Peas grow well with carrots because there's some substance that the peas secrete that the carrots love and it makes them flourish. Are you
Nitrogen.
finding that?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. There's definitely something to that. There's certain crops or seeds that like to be together because they have a symbiosis. It's another
Yes.
fancy term. But in other words, what one plant can feed the other plant, and that plant can feed the other plant, and um, so yes, that's so. Um, I have seen in Paul Gauci in the Back to Eden Garden documentary
Mm-hmm.
where he grew a desert plant smack next to a water plant and the exact same ground, sun, space, the soil, everything, and they both were flourishing. Okay, so man's rules, be careful. uh, we all have man's brain and we have our thinking, but I caution people, if you want to have the best garden possible, which is God's way, you have to talk to him, you have to ask him, you have to copy him, and if you learned how to garden or farm as man's rules, it's kind of hard to break that habit, because you say, "Whoa, that's a man's rule, and I got to have this, and I have to do it this way." And but how does God do it naturally, automatically? And it's exactly the same as what you preach and teach is eating for health.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My garden and my soil is feeding my property, my water, my air, and me, and lots of other people. I give away at least 80 or 90% of all I grow. Um, so I'm feeding, and my soil was practically devoid of worms. And now they there's there's got to be hundreds or thousands of them in a 3x3 space. I mean, sometimes I've gone to cultivate and I can't even stick the hoe in the soil, and 5 worms are scattering where I was cultivating. So soil life is same as gut life. Okay, you have to think of it that way. You were saying before that all life comes from the soil. Well, that not only includes soil life for the plants, but it also refers to the same soil in our body. And this is an interesting fact that is interesting to me. The same soil that is in our garden, that is in a double handful of good garden soil, there are as many living microbes as human beings alive on the entire earth. You know, like 700, excuse me,
billion. Mm-hmm.
7.5 billion people alive on earth today or more,
Mm-hmm.
in a couple of handfuls of soil.
Mm-hmm. And there's
They,
trillions of microbes and bacteria in our gut that are the soil that you talk about, because that's the place where when we eat, it processes through, and the nourishment that our gut has leads to the health of our bodies. I love that you brought that in.
well, here's something that will really blow your mind. When God formed the first person, Adam, he formed it out of the dust of the garden.
Mm-hmm.
He formed the body with the dust of the garden.
Mm-hmm.
So that soil that is in the garden is directly in us. So,
Wow.
so the
Mm-hmm.
connection, the connection of our bodies and our health is the same as the soil and plants. And we,
Mm-hmm.
and so when we eat the plants from a nice garden, when we eat that and it goes into our digestive system, what happens is we think that, oh, our saliva does this and our stomach does that and our intestines do this, but they're not doing the work. It's what's in it, the microbes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's up to 100 trillion microbes in each person, and they are breaking the food down, not your stomach, and not that's where the bacteria are, where the microbes are, and about millions of them, and they are not all the same. They have thousands of different kinds of microbes, and they all do different things, but God invented an amazing planet and amazing bodies.
Yes, he did.
And all we got to do is
Mm-hmm.
cooperate. If we give it the right food, and we will grow our microbiome in our gut. And if we give our gardens the right food, it will grow. My garden, you could drop almost any. In fact, I do. I drop outdated seeds next to my bench. I mean, they could be 3, 4, 5 years old, weathered, beaten, wet, cold, not taken care of, and I just throw them on the ground, and they grow. That's how good my garden soil is.
Wow. And
Okay.
so it is important to know that your soil is rich enough in nutrients to supply the plants what they need, just
Mhm.
like the plants are full of nutrients that supply our bodies with what we need. And, there's this whole thing around the colors of food, right?
Mhm.
You don't want to just eat everything green, although we do know that green vegetables and cruciferous vegetables that are mostly that deep, rich color, except for cauliflower, um, are the things that we definitely want to bring in. But what about the other colors of the rainbows, the peppers and the tomatoes? We mentioned tomatoes, but The other colors. Talk about the other colors.
Well, yeah, red, green, purple, yellow, white, um, all shades of the rainbow. And we should be eating the rainbow as far as what we eat. That also tells us what we should plant, you know? Um, and some plants are a lot more nutritious than others. For example, when people think of their typical salad, they're thinking of iceberg lettuce. Well, you can plant iceberg lettuce in a home garden, and you don't get as beautiful a head as what you'd buy in the market, but it's just as good. But it's the least nutritious. And there's many other kinds of lettuce and kale and those type of foods that will give you far more. But the thing is, have fun. Plant, once you know a little bit more of what you're doing and you get a little more adventurous and a little more confident, have fun. It's if something dies, don't go, oh my God, I don't have a green thumb, or I give up. No, that's one, like when Edison was inventing the light bulb, he said, well, I can tell you 10,000 ways that it doesn't work. But he had to do 10,000 experiments to find the one that did. So never give up at anything in life, and gardening, and also your health.
Right.
As long as you've got breath, and you can find a way, and so do it, enjoy it.
I love that. I love that. And so, if there's someone out there who's just like, what are some of the best ways I can learn about gardening? What are some of the best ways that you would recommend?
Well, for me, the easiest, fastest way are the videos. Um, I'm not a big reader, I'm fortunately, um, and it takes a lot more time. And seeing a person doing something is worth 10,000 words, or a lot of words anyway. And you pick up so much more. You can pick up so much more from a video. So I would say that's got to be the number one way. Um, but um, just talk, if you have a neighbor or a friend who's a gardener or a farmer, say, I would love to come see your garden. Would you mind if I came to see your garden? Well, any gardener is going to be proud of their garden, and or even if they're a little ashamed that it's not quite up to par, well, you're going to learn something. So learn from each other, because we're all in the same boat, and we're all learning.
Mm-hmm.
And even a person who's been gardening for one day can help a person who's not started. So you can be of help to anybody, and they can be help to you. So go visit gardens. Go, whether even if it's flower gardens. I know I'm mostly speaking about vegetables and eating, but flowers can be eaten. Flowers
Yes,
do
they can.
draw the bees and the insects that are needed for not only the flowers but also the vegetables. So starting a couple of years ago, I started planting flowers in my vegetable garden, and I suggest that people who grow nothing but flower beds stick a few vegetables in there, because both will work and do each other good. So
I love that. And one of the other things that I used to do when I lived in California is they had some amazing nurseries that had classes on how to grow your garden. And sometimes they would get, rather than being that broad in subject matter, they'd be the benefits of growing cauliflower and how to grow cauliflower, or how to grow this particular thing. And it was fascinating because they went through everything that we're talking about. What grows great with that vegetable? What you don't want to plant with that vegetable? How to plant it so that it can grow the most robustly that it can. And I love stuff like that, because those are family type things that you can do as well. A lot of those things happened on a Saturday morning. so that you could, you know, have breakfast, scoot the kids together, and go out and have a family activity. And I know a lot of our families have kids who are in sports and this type of thing. Um, but if you have, you know, multiple kids, maybe one kid's like, I want to go to the garden, I want to do sports, then you can have a way to do that and bring all aspects together, because the kid that likes the gardening, maybe mom takes them there, dad takes the other one to the sporting event, or vice versa. But they, when they come back together, there's so much more for the family to enjoy that includes this aspect of food. And we didn't even talk very much about using food as medicine, because that is like the premise of all of this. But these, the vegetables and the fruits that we were talking about, these are the foods that are medicine for our bodies. And I love, Bob, that you brought in the this is your workout routine and your health spa, because you get out there and sweat a little bit, right?
Mhm.
And your mental health regimen. I mean, that is so great. Your time to just be with spirit and commune in that spiritual place. So there's so many benefits to gardening. If there was one benefit that you would share with our audience to really invite them in to participate in this, bringing more food into their lives, bringing more connection to healthy food into their lives, what would that be?
Boy, that's a really tough question. I guess I could answer it if you have a family or with children, especially. um, if there is that one child that is interested in the garden with mom or dad, that's a very special time for that child and that mom or dad. So that's good. I, the other thing that you brought up of how many, all the different ways of working in that garden are beneficial. And one of them that you didn't mention, I think is outstanding reason for any mom or dad to start a garden is education of their son or daughter during the summer. Most of the gardens that grow are going to be growing during the warmer time, and a lot of times school is out during the summer. And it's a garden is a classroom, okay? Only, a matter of fact, they do have an analogy. When I go to church on Sunday morning, I, similar to a college course, that's the lecture course. That is the content lecture, okay? That's where you hear the word. Well, in my garden, that's God's laboratory. Hands-on place that you see God, know God, his rules, his natural laws, what works, what doesn't work. It's his classroom, his lab class. So, and I mean, I'm as old as I am. I love learning. It's exciting. But just imagine, I'm going to have my son's son is moving here in the summer, and he's all into, like you were mentioning, computer games. And people, these kids, they just are phenomenal at these games, and it takes up almost 100% of their living protoplasm, I think. They never get out in the sunshine or the air, and they're dealing with make-believe games. And I'm going to take them out into my garden, and I'm going to show them, teach them, have them help me observe, etc., learn about real life and real lessons, because life lessons are there. So I don't know if that directly answers your question, but
Yes. And I think the short answer is go plant a garden. And, you know, to that point, there's so many other things that a garden brings about. Like Bob said, just this whole a deeper connection with family, this deeper connection with spirit. And one of the things with a garden where we talked about, you know, different plants supporting other plants, it improves flavor. And Bob mentioned about attracting pollinators and repelling bad bugs. A lot of that has to do with the types of vegetables that you plant. And I'd like to invite you that if you want to learn more about all of this whole plant stuff, just using food as medicine. If you're just getting started and you're curious to know more, that's why we're bringing you these Friday sessions. And I want to also offer you 3 things to do, easy peasy things to do. And here they are. One, type in your browser just one thing for health.com. That's just one thing for health.com into your web browser and sign up for our free, that's right, it's free, just one thing for health challenge to better health email series. Each week you'll get an email that's going to challenge you to do one thing for your health, and you'll learn why it's a good move, along with all of the overall benefits you'll get from doing it. We're going to be adding more to this as time goes on, but the series is set and you'll get some great information from, we interviewed 30 plus doctors, many who are leading in the field of whole food plant-based lifestyle. And they actually shared the one thing they recommend for their patients and family and friends to do to start on this journey. If you're already on to being in the series, to watch the video, learn who the others are, learn the information that they're sharing, and the resources, the studies, science, the medical research study results that are showing that food, the kind of food that you have readily available to you, can reverse and eliminate cancer, chronic illness, obesity, losing weight permanently, and all you're doing is eating differently, heart disease. I always go back to hearing one of the doctors talk about the fact that he's offering his patients an alternative now. He's the surgeon. He's going in to do triple, quadruple bypass surgery, and he's offering his patients an opportunity to have an alternative, which is change your diet, eat this way, and having people in 6 months to open all of the blockages in their heart, and not have to go through getting their chest cracked open and, you know, all kinds of other things that are almost unimaginable, not to mention the pain and the, you know, effects of the drugs that you have to go under. Wouldn't that seem radical as opposed to changing your diet, eating more vegetables and fruits, and then growing them yourself so that you know where they're coming from? That's what we're doing with this series. And so, again, go to justonethingforhealth.com, sign up for the series, make a commitment to watch the videos, and share your biggest takeaway or something that you'd like to add to the information that was discussed. And third, find us on Facebook. Like us on Facebook, comment on the post, tag your friends and associates, share a post or two. We're always posting great quotes and great connections for you to make too, using food as medicine. And this 3E series is all about educating you with the information so that you can experiment in growing your garden, experiment in making these dishes, find recipes on the website, experiment with them, and then empowering you to take your health into your hands, not put it in the hands of doctors who, while they may be well-meaning, they do not know how food actually plays a role in either your illness or your recovery. So, in closing, I want to thank you for hanging out with me and Bob today. And I want to remind you again, subscribe to the Just One Thing for Health Challenge to Better Health email series. Watch the videos, post on our Facebook page, and share. Help us to move this message out. And with that, Bob, thank you so much for all that you've contributed with today, sharing your garden. I thought I would have gotten you to share pictures, but maybe we can do more of that online on the Facebook page so that people can exactly what you're talking about with your garden in the front yard and your gift bags to folks and things of that nature. That would be awesome.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and I hope I've inspired some new gardeners and some old gardeners to rededicate and grow the food, because this day and age, like you say, it's not only important for our health, but it's also important that our families are going to have enough food. We need to grow our own gardens for food security, and in addition to food safety, because I fear that the population and the amount of land that is being used for growing all these crops, we're running out of worldwide land to grow these crops, and the speed at which to get them to the grocery stores. And if your family, I think that many of the grocery stores have been struggling to fill their shelves fast enough in good times. So if things are not good, you'll have your garden. And if you don't have your garden, that's a problem.
Yes. And I love that you brought it in. What a great note to close on, because what we want to do is empower you to not just take your health back and have your health and be making your health your priority, but also giving your family and neighbors, if that's the case, the opportunity to live their best health. And it comes from the garden, um, from garden to table. We go to restaurants now and we can find more of that. And they will probably be the places that we end up going when the food is gone from the grocery stores, but they're going to be dealing with some of the same issues. They're going to be feeding more people. And so there's going to be the issue of how do we balance that? How do we counterbalance that? And I would just love to see, for what we've seen as far as the run on the grocery stores recently, if we had a run on the nurseries and on the neighborhood um, nurseries, where you could go and buy the dirt and the mulch and the wood chips, and take this time to really make sure that your soil is ready for some seedlings that you can start planting, and see what you might have in the next month or 2 or 3. I've seen some people who've been inspired by this thinking that have done some planning, and I'm just amazed at some of the things that are already showing up. So, my goodness. And again, thank you, Bob. I appreciate you and all you've shared today.
Well, thank you, V-Lynn. It's always a pleasure and a joy. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And to our audience, make sure that you join us next Friday. I can't promise about whether or not we'll be live. I'm going to just stop doing that because it has not been working of late. But you will see a video like this and watch it, comment, share it, because our goal is to, as the 3 E's, educate, help you experiment, and empower you to do more to improve your life and the lives of your families. So thanks again, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.